Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Delighted to be here with this group on the stage, and delighted to have so many folks gathered tonight in honor of democracy. So I want to talk a little bit about where we are right now as a state. As you know, right now we have 800,000 people in Colorado without health care. As you know, we started this year with a $1.4 billion budget deficit. As you know, we have now 9% unemployment in the city of Denver. 2,500 people in our district alone that are without jobs. As you know, we have 50 to 55% of kids that aren't even graduating high school. And so the question fairly from this group probably is, who wants this job? That's a question that I've heard before. Who wants this job? That was the same question I heard 4 years ago when we opened our high school up in Thornton. What we knew then was that we had 55% of kids who were dropping out of high school. We had 75% of kids that were on free and reduced lunch. We had maybe 10 or 15% of kids that were actually going to college. And when we pulled together a team to say things could be done differently, 3 years later, we had 100% of our seniors all graduating and getting into a four-year college. That was the same question I heard when I went down to New Orleans after Katrina. And they said, this city will never be the same again. It can never be revived. And we worked together to write and pass a piece of federal legislation called the Renewal Act that helped make it possible for families to return to New Orleans, to get their houses back, to rebuild the public school system. That same question, who wants this job, was the question we heard when I started working on the Obama campaign 2 years ago, doing education policy. And we were trying to figure out how we could convince the country that education was ultimately the engine for long-term economic recovery. And if we wanted to transform the way this country looked, we had to make historic investments in education as a way of getting the job done. I'm proud to announce that just today, when President Obama released his budget, in that budget is the most significant expansion and investment in education since the GI Bill. So what I think of is the old Bobby Kennedy quote that is, some people see the world the way that it is and ask why, and I see things the way that they could be and ask why not. So the question is, how do we get from where we are to where we want to go? And to get to that place requires not worrying about who gets the credit, but worrying about how we get down to doing this work together and getting the things accomplished that we hope we can do in this state. That means being able to frame this issue in a way that we realize that universal health care is not just a moral obligation, it's a fiscally sound policy. It's helping us realize that there is an educational interest as well as a corporate interest in making sure that we don't have 55% of kids drop out of high school. It's helping the state realize that we have an interest not just in creating a sound budget that allows us the opportunities to do the kind of core democratic services that we want to provide, but also that there's a valid interest in making sure that we spend that money fairly and frugally that comes from the people of this state. So there is a way now for us to look at what have seemed to be hard and intractable problems and say, in those problems lie real opportunities. But to take advantage of those is going to take us being willing to do what I've had the chance to do in different places throughout my career, which is bring together an incredible team of people who share a vision and set incredibly high goals and say we're not willing to settle for any less. And I know that we are in a moment now with this district and this state to respond to these challenges with that type of tenacity, but it takes all of our commitment to do it. So I ask for your support in doing it, and I ask for you to join me in us beginning to take on these huge challenges, knowing that big successes lie ahead. Thanks so much.